Oh, man, overnight, well, at least I was sleeping. I can't speak for you. Coming into a Monday morning, President Trump just dropped this on Truth Social in the last few hours. And once again, my eyes were closed. I was hitting my REM sleep coming into a Monday morning when Trump drops this. The pardons that sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. More importantly, he did not know anything about them. Wow. Okay, that's a kickoff to a Monday morning. It's great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio. Trump at about 11:30 last night, just putting out a post on Truth Social saying that all of Biden's last-minute pardons are void due to the alleged use of an auto pen. Now, of course, those Biden pardons late in his presidency included his family members, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and the January 6th committee. Now, you know that this one is going to get fought in court like crazy. But Trump goes on to say here in his post that he knew nothing about them, meaning Biden, and the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the unselect committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. He wraps up this gem of a post by writing here. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country.
Come on, man.
Crooked Joe Biden. All caps. Wow. Well, if that's any sign of the week to come, we are in for a doozy. And we are glad that you are with us on KCMO Talk Radio, always streaming, of course, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So this is not where I was going to start the show, but I woke up this morning. I saw that right away, and I said, man, we are in for it. Now, I think that there is a little bit of 3D chess going on here, and let me explain. My initial reaction was to say the American people right now are not thinking about Jim Biden. They're not thinking about Hunter Biden and his crack pipe. They're not thinking about Tony Fauci. They're not thinking about any of that. They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about their economic well-being. They're focused on making sure they can navigate what appears to be a fairly tumultuous time as we try to get this economy back on track and get off of the sugar high that is the government money. But then I sat back and I said, wait, well, hold on a second here. If the Democratic goal right now is just to stop everything and push back on everything that Donald Trump is doing, where literally if he says the sky is blue, they scream, no, it's not. No. That tree is green leaves. No.
How dare you?
If that's the space that his political opponents are in right now, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that is where they're at this moment, then I sit here and I say, well, if they want to be the party of defending Jim Biden and screaming about Fauci's pardons and the January 6th committee's pardons and getting to a place where they are defending Joe Biden and the alleged use of an auto pen, I'm not sure that's the place you want to be right now. I don't think that's really what you want to be representing at this point in time. So as much as I'm like, all right, of all the things going on in this country, this is very low on the list. It might do what Trump is trying to accomplish here, which is try to continue to make his opponents completely neutered and out of touch with the American people. Like, Trump is more popular than he's ever been based on some recent polling that came out over the weekend. He had an NBC News poll that had him at 47% approval, but he still was at 51% disapproval. But in politics, what do you have to be? You only have to be more popular than your opponent. That's it. That's literally the only thing that you have to do to continue to have success. Be more popular than your opponent. It's a zero-sum game. One vote for you is one less vote for your opponent, and of course, vice versa. So Trump's sitting there maybe saying to himself, I'm doing a lot of good things. I'm at my highest levels of approval. But obviously, I still have this gap where a lot of people just aren't going to like me because of who I am. They've got that TDS, as we call it, that Trump derangement syndrome. But if I can make my political opponents, through their triggering by me, so out of touch with the mainstream, that will continue to be a good thing for him. And I think that's where we're at right now. Because there was this CNN poll that came out over the weekend. And I will let Manu Raju of CNN explain this one to you and share this doozy of a poll that is not going to make Donald Trump's opponents very happy.
Politics Sunday, I'm Manu Raju. First up this morning, a brand new exclusive CNN poll that paints a brutal reality for Democrats as they struggle to mount a unified opposition to President Trump. Americans' favorable views of the Democratic Party's brand are at a record low, just 29%. That's compared to 36% for Republicans. It is the lowest ever recorded for Democrats in CNN polling going back more than 30 years. As you can see, the party's numbers dropping a staggering 20 points in just 4 years.
The Democratic Party's favorability is at a record low, 29%, going back to 1992, and a drop of just 20 points in the last 4 years, since January of 21. Now, first off, there's a lesson here for Republicans that I'll get to in a second. But if you're the Democratic Party, you have got to look at these numbers and say, oh my gosh, what are we doing wrong? Now, some are highlighting, well, the Republicans are only at 36, Democrats are at 29. Oh, okay. But once again, in politics, you'd like to be 7 points ahead of your opponent. That's a good place to be. If you're a Democrat and you look at this poll and you say, well, you guys aren't that popular either. Okay, I'm looking at why I'm off 20 points. I'm looking at why I'm down in the last 4 years. Literally 40+% from where I was just a few years ago. That's the obvious thing to do if you care about winning again in the future. And it can't be all about Trump. It just can't be. That's got to be the moral of the story here. Everything cannot be surrounding one guy and your derangement for him. That's the only conclusion, or at least the first conclusion to come to. I would also advise to stop telling people that, men can compete in women's sports. I would bail out of that as well. I would stop treating federal workers like there's some kind of special class. Those are just some of the first things that come to mind that I would look at and try to start thinking twice about if you want to regain that popularity. But these numbers are absolutely horrific. And the message for Republicans is a simple one. You have a moment here. But remember, the American electorate swings back and forth. You get a moment, you get to prove yourself, and if you don't prove yourself and do it relatively quickly, guess what? You're going to be shown the door as well. You have to be smart, you have to be strategic, you have to be on point, and you have to do it in a way that makes people believe that you care about them. And explain to them and be transparent with them as to what exactly you're doing. Because if not, they'll kick you out as well. 913-408-7957 as we get it going on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Let's go to Jonathan in Kansas City. Hey, Jonathan, happy Monday, my man. What's going on?
Happy Monday. I think, obviously, this is a very sweeping order. This, like many of his orders, it's going to end up before the Supreme Court. Those 9 justices, they're going to have to They're going to have to take a position, and they're
Now,
going to have to.
You are talking about Trump's order overnight about
Correct.
canceling
Like,
Biden's
they're
pardons.
They're basically going to have to litigate. And I could see the Democrats arguing the other side. You know, they're lawyers. They got great lawyers. They're going to have to spend hours before those justices arguing, is an auto pen constitutional? I could see them writing a split opinion where they're going to say, you know what, it is constitutional if the president was the one who used the auto pen, which then Trump is going to have his executive branch investigate the story behind that auto pen, like who used it. What I find unbelievable is he supposedly issued pardons 15 minutes before he left office. He was in the rotunda then, so I'm like, how could that possibly have been done? It made me scratch my head when I first heard that, you know?
Yeah, well, I remember that, Jonathan, and thanks for joining us on a Monday. The thing that I thought back to when Biden was in the rotunda on Trump's inauguration day, and it was announced that he had signed all these pardons, I just figured that he did it earlier in the morning and that it was just getting announced as they were getting set to inaugurate Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States. That's what I assumed. But now that we got this auto pen controversy that Trump says makes all of his pardons basically void, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm old school like this too, and maybe this is John rubbing off on me in some respects, but I've never understood the auto sign in general. I mean, how many things now do we auto sign for on our laptops, on our phones? And it's like, oh, yeah, that counts as a signature. Like people like literally put themselves into debt through auto signing on their phone. And how do you end up proving that that person actually signed it? I've never understood it for the life of me. Maybe we need to, in general, get out of the world of auto signing because I see so much of that going on. It is just beyond bizarre to me that there are things that we auto sign for. And it's like, yeah, that's good. All good. But Biden, if he did auto sign these pardons, certainly took that one to the next level. Just like everything else when he was in office. He just took it to the next level and didn't give a you know what. If he even knew what was going on, and that's part of what Trump is alleging here in this post overnight. Did Biden even know that these pardons were happening? Was he aware of these pardons? You going to put this guy under oath in a situation like that? That is going to be an absolute nightmare for him potentially. Wow. Well, today is a big day here on KCMO. We are launching a new midday show. You know that Dan Bongino, of course, is off to the FBI. His final show was on Friday. Vince Cogliane's The Vince Show is starting today at 11 o'clock in Dan Bongino's place. So Vince Cogliane is going to be here in 15 minutes to introduce himself to the Kansas City audience on KCMO Talk Radio Day 1. And he wanted to make sure that he said hi to Kansas City as he launches The Vince Show around the nation in place of Dan Bongino. So that is coming up at the bottom of the hour. And, of course, time for you. 913-408-7957. 624 rocking and rolling on a Monday morning. Vince Cogliane, the host of The Vince Show, launching in place of the Dan Bongino Show. Now 11-2 after Bongino heads off to the FBI. He will be here in 10 minutes. Do not miss that conversation. Early morning check-in. Randy is in Prairie Village with some news that you are hearing first on KCMO. Randy, what's going on there, brother?
I'm an employee at the Hen House in the Prairie Village Shopping Center at 69th and Mission Road. I'm just sitting here in my car right now. I got here a little before 5 to go into work, and the glass was broken in on one of the sliding doors, and so I called 911 because the people could have still been inside. And so now they've got it all roped off. They came out in force, what looked like the SWAT team with serious weaponry and then the canines, and they called out to the people in case they were in there, and then they swept the place with the canines, and they're looking for them in case there's somebody still in there, but I'm sure they're long gone. But anyway, they're doing that now, and the crime lab is here, and they've got it taped off and stuff. So,
is this the first time something like this has happened there?
Well, like this there is. Actually, 24 years ago, I was held at gunpoint for an hour and a half by people that were in here overnight and got the safe and stuff. So it's the second time that I know of in the last 24 years. That's
so
how
you've
long I've been with
you've
the
been working there 24 years. God bless you, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like that part of town is dealing with, unfortunately, an uptick in crime in some respects, and you hate to see it happen. But they don't have any information, or you have not heard any information on what exactly is going on?
Well, I have heard that there was our video surveillance people said that they came in around midnight, I guess. But I never heard whether they had video of them exiting or not. But that's when they came in, and so they're just making sure that everything's cool before we can go to work. But I'm just sitting here in my car right now.
So who's there? Prairie Village Police is there, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, all the other employees that would be working at this time are just sitting around in the parking lot, waiting to get in, so that we get the coast is clear from the police. So,
well, stay safe, man, and I guess you get to listen to the show a little bit longer. So there's a silver lining there.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate the insight. I will share this on our social media as well. That way, you can share it if you want to in real time, and that's the Henna House, 69th Street and Mission Road. There at the shopping center in Prairie Village. So we don't know all the details or really any of the details beyond what Randy just shared with us here on KCMO. But we know that there have been, some issues, shall we say, through parts of Prairie Village over the last couple of weeks. What was there? That person who was held up at gunpoint at a stoplight there in Prairie Village a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was. I mean, they've had their unusual number of issues, it seems like, in recent weeks for Prairie Village. Hello, Emmanuel Cleaver. Hello.
You must have
7:05. Good morning. It is great to be back on a Monday morning on KCMO. The congressman in Kansas City participated on Saturday in a fiery rally on behalf of federal workers in Kansas City. And man, do I wish I had the audio, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I just found the quotes from the Kansas City Star. I looked far and wide. So you know what? I just said to myself, that's another excuse for playing the all-time Emmanuel Cleaver drop.
You must have.
But apparently, he did not use that on Saturday. At least no one has transcribed it. But as the Kansas City Star wrote here, and I know that you might have missed it. I missed it. That's okay. Representative Emmanuel Cleaver's voice bellowed over hundreds of demonstrators gathered at a fiery rally in support of federal workers in Kansas City on Saturday as he delivered a thunderous denunciation of President Trump and his administration.
Had a red flag warning. You shouldn't be fiery.
Oh, my gosh. How dramatic of an introduction from the Kansas City Star is this?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Trump was shaking in his boots, losing sleep over Emmanuel Cleaver's fiery rally as his voice bellowed out and delivered a thunderous denunciation. Oh.
That was just the storm passing.
Yeah. Oh, Cleaver said to the audience, right now is a dangerous moment for the United States. Well, he's right. We're $36 trillion in debt, but I don't think that's what he meant. He goes on to say, because we have a dictator wannabe in the White House, and we want him to be gone. Well, that's debatable when you look at some of the recent polling. But I understand that if you're somebody who is a federal worker who may have recently lost your job, we feel bad for you. We do have sympathy for you. I have sympathy for anybody who's lost a gig. But if you think that the American electorate is turning on Trump because he's trying to clean out the bureaucratic mess that has been created over 30 years from Republicans and Democrats, but certainly went on steroids the last 4 years under the last guy in office.
Come on, man.
Well, I don't think that's the thing that's going to bring the undecided voter back into your camp. The Star goes on the note here. The rally, organized by unions representing area federal employees, jammed the sidewalk across the street from the IRS service campus at midday on Saturday. The gathering underscores the perilous, uncertain time federal workers across the Kansas City metro and the country find themselves in as Trump moves to gut federal agencies. Let me stop right there. The perilous, uncertain time workers find themselves in? You mean like the private sector every day? You mean like small business owners who have spent the last 5 years navigating a global pandemic, inflation, overregulation, devaluing of the dollar? You mean like what you, as you wake up and you go to the office this morning, have been thinking about for at least half a decade, but really it's been arguably an up and down tumultuous time for the better part of 15 years at this point, going back to the financial crisis of 2008. This woe is me, oh my gosh, we are such a sympathetic group of workers thing going on that the Kansas City Star, of course, is carrying the water for, is so out of touch with the moment. You can keep trying and you can keep trying to set the tone here, but I promise you it's not going to work. It's not. And there's very little evidence to suggest that it is. Sharice Davids was there on Saturday as well from Kansas. So there was a Sharice Davids sighting over the weekend.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. She was out and about. Can you believe it? The Kansas City Star writes here, over nearly 2 hours, Cleaver, Sharice Davids, and local elected officials and union leaders vowed to fight Trump and Elon Musk, urged demonstrators to organize and eventually vote the administration's supporters out of office. Cleaver said, "You're the ones who need to be the ones firing people. A man has no right to treat you again like this." Excuse me? Who pays for the salaries of the federal workforce? We do. You do. Your hard-earned money every single day that you pay to the government is then in turn paying the federal workforce. They work for you. That's not to say that you don't treat people with respect. That's not to say you don't be a decent person. But let's be very clear, Mr. Cleaver, on how this works. You don't have anything without us. And for a guy who's been mooching off the taxpayer for basically his entire adult life, I don't want to hear it from him. And nobody should want to hear it from him. Okay, I mean, talk about a tired and out-of-touch old man who is not in tune with the moment. That is Emmanuel Cleaver, who was missing for the last 4 years. When inflation was eating away at the working poor more than any other socioeconomic group in this country, many of which reside in his district, he was nowhere to be found. His head was so far up Joe Biden's backside, he was basically coming out of his mouth. And now for the last 2 months, we've seen more of Emmanuel Cleaver than we saw in 4 years. Now he's outraged. Maybe he should think about how we got here. Maybe Emmanuel Cleaver should step back for a second and wonder what happened. Instead, he's just, angry. He's out of touch. He's misunderstanding the moment. But I suppose he's catering to a base. Here's the problem. It's a base that is shrinking. A new CNN poll came out over the weekend that showed the Democratic Party is in a world of hurt. The Democratic Party right now has a favorability rating of 29%. That is a record low in CNN's polling going back to 1992. And it's a drop of 20 points since just 4 years ago in January of 2021. These are horrible numbers. And I understand you got to push back on your political opponents. You got to drum up the base during this time. But when it comes to just how the American people perceive you, it's not a net positive right now for Emmanuel Cleaver and his party. It's not working like he thinks it is. or like his handlers are telling him it will. And that's why you have these numbers where they're at. And to think that a big rally outside of the IRS building on a Saturday is going to be the thing that turns people's attention here in Kansas City and around the country, you got another thing coming. You guys don't understand what's actually happening right now. And that's not to say that, Trump's the most popular president of all time and nothing's going to change that. No, he's still struggling a little bit. He's still underwater per a new NBC News poll over the weekend, but he's also at the highest approval numbers he's ever had. And here's the thing in politics. You only have to be more popular than your opponent. It's a zero-sum game. That's all that matters. And Emmanuel Cleaver, of all people, who has won a lot of elections to his credit, should understand that more than anybody. He's only got to be more popular than you. And based on what you're doing right now, that is not a tall task. 7:35, happy Monday. Welcome to the start of a new week on KCMO. And a quick shout out to our friends over at Grandma's Catering. They brought in some bagels this morning, so the boys are already busily chomping away in there. How is it this morning, fellas?
I think John got a bagel. I got a cinnamon roll. I still have some yogurt over here.
All right. Easy. Easy does it there, guys. We got a show to put on here, all right? All right. We got work to do here.
I'm not going to fall asleep on you.
Thank you. Very good. Well, you can enter to win free catering from Grandma's at KCMOTalkRadio.com. And you know who loves that word free? Bernie Sanders. Oh, he loves it.
Gotta love it, Pete.
Gotta love it. He loves the word free. Of course, there's no free lunch. Free doesn't actually exist. But Bernie loves screaming about the word free. And over the weekend, our buddy Bernie Sanders was going viral for this post that he put up on X. Reads as follows. Stress kills, all caps. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, struggling every day to keep their families going. The result, working class people die 7 years earlier than the rich. We need an economy that works for all, not just the few. Who wants to let Bernie know that over the last few years, we have had more people living paycheck to paycheck thanks to obscene government spending that has devalued people's savings, has devalued the dollar to the point where they have to pay more for everyday goods. Their lifestyle for the average American family, the same lifestyle, cost $10,000 more than it did just a few years ago. We tried Bernie's model. We tried a minor league version of Bernie's model, and it failed dramatically and colossally. We printed money, we handed it out, we gave it to people, and then once it dried up, what happened? Suddenly people were poorer than they were before all the money got printed. And Bernie thinks, of course, the answer is always the government. The government has all the answers. The government will solve all of our problems, says the guy who's never had a real job in his life.
Come on, man.
He hasn't. The guy was getting kicked out of his commune before he realized, it would be a pretty sweet gig. Just working. Well, working is a relative use of the word, but just being an employee of the government and not actually having to create anything at any given point in time ever. And to his credit, the guy made it work for the last 45 years, and now he's got 3 homes screaming about the rich people. It's quite a grift. And if you never get called out by your own side, it's an all-time grift. Fighting for the little guy. Buy my book. I've got 3 homes. The rich are the worst. Okay, Bernie.
I can't remember.
So.
3 books and 3 homes or 2 books.
This guy is such a charlatan. And as he continues to do this charade of fighting for the little guy and fighting for the working man and, fighting the rich, I'll tell you right now, you go back to Obama 2008. What we have seen is a growth in the wealth gap. While over the last 16 years, 12 of those years, Democrats have been in the White House. And the wealth gap has grown more than it has in several generations. Ask yourself why. Government spending made the markets very frothy. Stock markets gone bonkers the last 15 years. The working class has shrunk. The middle class has shrunk under the people in power who insist they're fighting for the middle class and fighting for the working guy and gal. And the results are anything but. Now, during the overnight hours, you may have missed this. I woke up to it. But Trump put up a post, and he just talked about this moments ago on Air Force One. So I want to set this up before we play the audio clip that just came down. President Trump sharing here at 11:30 last night that the pardons from Joe Biden that were given to the unselect committee of political thugs, these are, of course, his words. I know that'll surprise you. And many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by AutoPen. So there's this allegation now that Joe Biden was signing things with AutoPen. And Trump is now saying that Joe Biden's pardons that came late in his tenure are void because they were done by AutoPen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them, alleges Trump. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed a crime. So, who is on that list? Who got pardoned? Just to remind you. Well, that would be Joe Biden's family members. That would be Dr. Fauci. Packaday Fauci. General Mark Milley, and the January 6th committee. Trump is saying that all of those pardons are void because of the use of AutoPen, which, of course, it looks like they are all AutoPen. But this thing feels like it's going to go through the courts and may make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. Trump talked about it on Air Force One moments ago, and here's what he said.
We have thousands of murderers. That Biden and his incompetency, first of all, he's grossly incompetent, but that Biden and his people and his probably AutoPen, it looked like we had an AutoPen for a president, and we would have been better off if we had probably. But it looks to me like, that's a big subject. I'm sure you won't ask about that, but the whole subject of AutoPen, did he know what he was doing? Did he authorize it? Or is this somebody in an office, maybe a radical left lunatic, just signing whatever that person wants? That's not what it's all about. I never use it. I mean, we may use it as an example to send some young person a letter. It's nice, we get thousands and thousands of letters and letters of support for young people, for people that aren't feeling well, etc. But to sign pardons and all of the things that he signed with an AutoPen is disgraceful.
So you mean those letters that get sent to little kids with cancer aren't actually being signed by Trump? What? What's that? Hey, what's that? Nuts? No. What's that all about? I see what he's going for there. And you get the point. Now, my first reaction when I woke up to this morning was to say, I don't know, man. I mean, I think people want to forget about Tony Fauci. I don't think anyone wants to ever hear again about Hunter Biden and his crack pipes. I don't think there's any interest in that. But then I stepped back and I said, well, is there some 3D chess going on here? And what I mean is, if this now becomes a news story, and if Trump is going to fight the AutoPen pardons, the alleged AutoPen pardons of Joe Biden, will those who have to oppose everything that Donald Trump does, because that's what they think that they have been put on this earth to do, are they now going to have to defend Dr. Fauci? Are they going to have to defend Hunter Biden? His brother Jim Biden? Are they now, because everything that Trump does, if he says the sky is blue, they say, no, it's not. Are they now going to have to find themselves in a place where they're defending this kind of ridiculousness? Where they're defending Mark Milley, January 6th committees, talking about that all over again. And is Trump basically saying, this could be and will be a political win for me because they're going to look insane defending Fauci, who nobody likes. I mean, outside of the diehard people who you still see wearing masks in 2025, like it's April of 2020. Outside of that crowd, No one likes Fauci. And, you know, the whole like Biden pardoning his family thing, if you think that's the side you want to be on with the American people, how Biden should be allowed to basically pre-pardon his entire family, I'm also pretty confident that's not going to be popular with regular folks. So maybe Trump's saying in part, I'm going to take a political risk here that this once again will be beneficial to me because all you have to do is be more popular than your political opponents. That's the name of the game. The good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend is coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio. And next hour, Scott Fawn was at ground zero of some of the worst tornadoes in southeast Missouri over the weekend. So he will join us at 8:30 on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's my question for you. You think about where we are today in this country and whether or not you think the country's heading on the right track or whether or not you think the country's heading on the wrong track. And think about how Americans would have answered that question about 1 year ago. Let's say January of 2024. Where do you think the American people were then? And where do you think they are right now? I'll give you a second to think about it because how you answer that to yourself right now, whether you're in the car, you're listening on the app, you're in the home office listening on your Alexa or your Google, how you answer that will be a clear test to yourself whether or not you are in touch with where the American public is at today and whether or not you are in touch with where the country is headed today. So 1 year ago, 14 months ago, this question was asked by NBC News in their polling. And 22% of Americans said that the country was on the right track, and 73% of Americans said the country was on the wrong track. That is minus 51. In the most recent poll done by NBC News that came out yesterday, 44% of Americans say we are on the right track. 54% say we are on the wrong track. That is a 20% improvement amongst the American voter that believes we are on the right track. It's also the highest that number has been since 2004 in this NBC News poll. I mean, that is a stunning turnaround in 14 months. So if you're sitting there right now and you're like, wow, I was off on that. Boy, wait, what? Wait, what? With this Orange Man? With Orange Man bad? How's that? What? You're consuming the wrong media. I'm not saying you have to listen to us 4 hours every day, although we'd love for you to do that here on KCMO and then catch Keatsman as well. And then you got the Vince Colonnese show coming up now. Day one for him at 11 o'clock on 95.7 FM, replacing Dan Bongino, who I saw got confirmed this morning. But just know if you are living in a world and living in a bubble that is telling you how awful everything is and how the country is heading down the wrong path, just know that the American people are not there with you. They're not. And then you had that on the backs of a CNN poll that came out over the weekend that showed 29% of Americans approve and like where the Democratic Party is at today. So this question was then asked, and the poll was brought up over the weekend to Chris Murphy. Chris Murphy is a senator from Connecticut. And he was asked, hey, you guys are not popular right now. What are you going to do about it? And here's what this Mensa member had to say.
Our new NBC News poll, as you just saw, shows the Democratic Party at an all-time low approval rating. Why do you think Democrats are failing to connect with Americans at this critical moment of urgency, which you describe?
Well, it's what I just talked about. I mean, I think Americans want the Democratic Party to stand up and fight and to take risks. Listen, I understand that had we gone into a shutdown, even for a handful of days, it would have been difficult. But it would have sent a message that the Democratic Party is not going to be bullied by Donald Trump. We are not going to let them write spending bills unilaterally that cut programs for people we care about, that give the president new and extraordinary power. I think Democrats in this country, but I think the broad middle of the public as well, want to see our party fighting in exceptional ways. That is the conversation that has to happen inside of the Democratic Party, inside our caucus. And if we don't get that right, if we continue to work with Republicans, if we continue to hand Donald Trump more power, we are going to lose our democracy.
So we're still doing that, huh? We're going back to the world of our democracy is falling we are losing our democracy. Man.
He's a cuckoo bird.
We are doing that again, huh? That was Chris Murphy, U.S. Senator from Connecticut. His answer to his party's lack of popularity and the NBC News poll that was courtesy of Meet the Press, coming to the conclusion that Americans, for the first time in, 20 years, have the highest percentage of us who believe the country's on the right track. His answer to that, it's kind of like more cowbell, more TDS, more anti-Trump. That's the answer from Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Well, I hate to break it to you, Chris, but that's not going to work there, big boy. It's not. Trump's approval numbers in this NBC News poll show him at 47%, disapprove at 51%. That is the highest number he's ever had, courtesy of this NBC News poll. You go back to 2017. Trump peaked in the mid-40s. 44 was his high. He got to 46 at a point in 2018, and then it was kind of downhill from there, although he was always in that 43 to 45, 46 range. He's sitting there right now at 47. Sure, I'd love him to be at 50, but guess what? A high watermark for the guy, when the media is back to its standard, everything Trump does is the worst thing ever, is destroying democracy, and we're all going to die, that's not too bad. So if your strategy is to look in the mirror and say, you know what we got to do? We got to double down on why Trump stinks. No, I think you need to figure out how we got here and how the party is as unpopular as it's been in that CNN poll since they started the polling back in 1992. Take a listen to Hillary Clinton. I dug up this clip from 2008, Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail talking about immigration policy. You tell me who this sounds like.
So I think we got to have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked. They're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes. And you have to try to learn English. And you have to wait in line.
What stood out to me there is not just what Hillary said, which today would be called racist by some. The applause from Democratic primary voters when Hillary says, you got to learn English. That is from Democratic primary voters in 2008. That was the biggest applause line she got in that 30-second clip. Now, if you say that, Trump just made English the official language of the United States, and people are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing?
How dare you?
You cannot do such a thing. You tell me who's changed over the last 15 years. You tell me who's gone further towards their base over the last 15 years. Based on what Hillary Clinton said back in 2008 in that very clip, in a primary of Democratic voters. And those voters cheered on what she was saying. If you are here illegally and committing crimes, you're done. You're going to pay back taxes. You're going to learn English. You're going to do these things that we used to all support in America. You tell me how one political party right now finds itself less popular than it ever has in the history of polling by the organization named CNN. It's because of what happened inside of their own party, not anything happening anywhere else. They've got no one to blame but the man, the woman, or I guess to use their terminology, the they, them in the mirror. 913-408-7957. And over the weekend, there was a big rally outside the IRS building in Kansas City. I will share with you some of the audio from that because it was a doozy. I have not played it all morning, but you had people down there protesting, and the audio is gold for all the wrong reasons. I've been sitting on this one all morning, We told you earlier today about Emmanuel Cleaver, who was outside of the IRS building, right in front of the, World War I Museum and Memorial, right in front of Union Station over there. And we don't have any Cleaver audio. I couldn't find it on the local news sites, but we do have this news package from KCTV5. And this is just an absolute audio gem, where they went out there to this rally that was taking place on behalf of federal workers who have been let go as part of DOGE's cuts. And here's what it sounded like from our partners over at Channel 5.
Federal workers and supporters line Pershing Road, chanting. Union! Union! And
right there, boy. Union power! Union power! Oh, my gosh. Make it stop. Make it stop, please. Oh,
I'm getting pissed now.
Holding signs that read, "Save the civil service."
This is not right. It is not fair.
Shannon Ellis, a National Treasury Employees Union president, says workers have been confused and scared, and says the IRS was already in need of workers prior to the layoffs.
So many of our agencies have been understaffed and underfunded for more than 15 years. For them to cut people that we've invested so much money in to get them trained and to help us out through the tax seasons, it's devastating to our agencies.
Really? See, here's what matters, though. Is it devastating to your customer? That's all that matters in business. In the free market, the only thing that matters is whether or not the out product, what you are producing, gets changed. Notice how she said there, it's devastating to our agencies. The only thing that the marketplace cares about is whether or not it's devastating to your customer or your consumer, who ultimately is the one who is buying and or using your product or service. And there's no evidence to suggest that it is. In fact, quite the opposite is true. And don't take my word for it. CNN wrote this piece over the weekend. Why IRS upheaval has not slowed tax season. They write here, the upheaval has not tripped up tax filing and refund issuance, tax professionals told CNN. In the past 7 weeks, they announced and they shared all the information on the cutoffs and the layoffs. But based on CNN's discussions with certified public accountants and enrolled agents, it appears that the electronic filing process has been running well so far. Huh, go figure. See, this is government work at its quintessential, idealistic vision that they have for themselves. It's all about us. It's not about you. They've become a jobs program. They're not actually sitting there saying, wait, maybe we can get by with less. Maybe there's not going to be some major impact to the taxpayer on their refunds and things of that nature. And that, at least as of now, appears to be happening. And you even hear from the union president outside of the IRS building in Kansas City, and she's not even making the case for how you get impacted. She's making the case for how they get impacted, which is very telling.
It says workers still employed now have to carry the weight of multiple employees, causing stress to an already stressful job.
Give these people back their jobs, fund the agencies that need to be funded, and help us do our job. Help us supply the products and the needs of the American people.
These
Wait. If they need to be funded, according to who? According to the union president? Is trying to get more people jobs to pay more union dues? Is that what it's about? It clearly is. Help! Tell me you're out of touch without telling me you're out of touch.
That's not on my talking points here.
No,
right?
I know.
These agencies. What agencies, lady?
Yeah.
Is she representing one? I didn't get that part, but she just was talking in generalities, sweeping generalities. These agencies need to be funded, yes, if they're useful to the American public.
Yeah. That was Shannon Ellis, president of the National Treasury Employee Union, Chapter 66.
Wonder how many people they lost.
Yeah. Well, if it was just the IRS workers here in Kansas City, it's about 100. That's it. 115, give or take?
Yeah.
That's nothing. Let's continue here with Channel 5.
Demonstrators say they hope the rally sends a clear message. Civil service jobs should remain stable and protected.
Employees are not villains. We are here to serve the American people, and the things that we do actually help American people every day.
No one says you're a villain, but the notion that your job should be protected because you're a civil servant, air quotes, is a joke. It should not be protected. In fact, nobody's job should technically be protected. I don't view this job as being a protected one. Trust me. You don't get into radio because you want to have a protected job. I promise you that much. Okay? There's far few jobs that are less protected than this one right here. You ask anybody who's worked in the industry, they can tell you that firsthand, okay?
6 times for me. Each time I can highlight the difference from the last time and the technological improvements in our unemployment system. So,
and that happens.
It used to be great. You'd wait on a check. Now you get a debit card, and it's just automatically deposited for you. That's great stuff.
It's amazing how it works, right? But if you think that you are going to go out to the American public and cry about how your job should be protected when they don't view their job as being protected, when you have small businesses who have been getting screwed every which way over the last few years, COVID, inflation, stagflation, uncertainty in the markets, confusion, overregulation. If you think the play is to say, our jobs must be protected and you must stand up for us, really? The government is the only place there's been any job growth. And guess what? That has goosed up the markets. It has screwed up the economy largely, and it's time for it to end. The rollbacks need to happen, and now they're finally happening. They're finally happening because guess what? Daddy's home. The adults are in charge. I know Biden claimed that he was the adult in the room. Come on, man. But nobody believed that. Even Jill was like, okay, settle down, old man. It's okay. Just sit back and relax. And don't forget this as well. Government workers, and I will share this on X from our good buddy EJ Antoni. He comes on the show, Heritage Foundation. Government workers are 42% more expensive than their private sector counterparts, with benefits packages costing 84% more for government employees. That data is up right now on X at Pete Mundo. You can see it there.